Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending HackCamp's first workshop. The first thing we're going to start with is what are we doing today? This is ABCs to Scoring Interviews by nwPlus. So, here we go. All right, let me introduce myself. I'm Christy, and I am a cmd-f logistics coordinator. I'm in my fourth year studying business and computer science. And everyone else, we have Jackie, Victoria, and Stephanie. They are wonderful TAs for today. So if you have any questions, they will be the ones answering. And I have linked the slides for this workshop in the hacker package, so feel free to interact with all of our slides. Okay, so getting into the timeline, what we're going to cover for this workshop is how to get ready for recruitment season. That will include what side projects, hackathons, or school courses you could take, resume, cover letter, how to leak code, or like get ready for leak code, and mock interviews. Then we're going to move on to application process, where I'll touch on some tips on how to make the group prep more tangible and quantify results or progress so far. And I'm going to give some resources on things you can do to like get yourself ready, as well finish it off with a speaker panel. All right, now, before we actually get started, if you haven't joined the Discord server yet, please do so at that link. And you can collect your stamps for this workshop at the ABCs to Scoring Interviews activity banter channel. And remember to take a break throughout the day and prepare for more fun workshops that we have lined up. And follow us on social media. All right, now let's get started. So getting ready for recruitment. Before recruitment season, what you should try to do is have some personal projects, which could be from hackathons, online tutorials, anything of that sort. So kudos to you for coming to HackCamp already, because you can have your project started there. And I guess like another very fundamental thing you need is to take a data structures or algorithms course, or at least try to self-learn those concepts on the side. And this is pretty vital because a lot of companies, when they're testing you in their technical interviews, they want you to understand those concepts very well. They might ask you questions looking at how familiar you are with a specific data structure, or ask you to implement a specific algorithm. All right, now moving on to what you need to actually apply. So you want to have a resume and a cover letter on hand. And it's very important for you to personalize your resume and cover letters if you're looking for your first job in particular. So you can write about your experiences there using a star format, and everything in this workshop that is colored different in text with the underline on it is a hyperlink. So feel free to click into that if you want to learn more about what a star format is. And for beginners who are starting off their career, I understand like not everyone has previous technical experience. So what do you put? You can put volunteering experience, or just any extracurriculars that you have that can demonstrate that you created an impact and you learned something. So it doesn't have to be technical. And another tip is to use an online resume reviewer to check how it ranks by an ATS. If you're wondering what an ATS is, a lot of companies where you're handing in their interviews, they have so many candidates submitting resumes. So they use computers to actually just screen for keywords on your resume. So that's what the ATS does. And if you use these online resume reviewers, they will just help to make sure that your resume actually passes the initial screen so that it can actually get into the hands of a real person recruiter. And finally, I think you should make a LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIns are really important because I guess recruiters expect resumes for new grads or internships to always be one page. And if you link a LinkedIn allows you to have a bunch more space for you to share what you want to say about yourself that you might not be able to fit into that one page. Additionally, a lot of recruiters might actually reach out if you set your LinkedIn status to like looking for an internship or looking for a full-time role. So they might reach out to you with an offer and like expedite you through the process. So those are really important. And I just have some examples of like my first resume and cover letter. You can see how like it's kind of stylized the same format, and you want to keep things to one page, very simple. Of course, like this is not a good example just because it was like my very first one. I just want to show you like that's how you get started, something similar to that. All right, moving on to leak code. So this workshop, I won't cover how you can actually leak code or like how to get good at it, because you just got to do it. You just practice. That's how you get good at interviews. So we actually have another workshop this coming afternoon that will touch on how you actually get into the technical interview nitty-gritty stuff. So stay tuned for that workshop. But yeah, back to leak code and how to get started. So I think first of all, just do it. Then second of all, make sure you're covering a broad range of topics. So if you're comfortable with, let's say, arrays, string manipulation, that sort of thing, don't just let yourself rabbit hole down those because you're comfortable with. You should try being comfortable with not being comfortable. So in that sense, like you can do arrays, maps, I don't know, DP, lots of things that you should cover because it sucks so much if you go into an interview and you only study for two things, but they ask you the third thing, which you could have easily studied for as well. And I guess to get started with Leak Code, there's actually a lot of beginner friendly tutorials and challenges and learning modules that they have on the website. So if you are looking for motivation to just like get into the habit, I think they have monthly challenges where you can like mark down every single day that you've worked on. So that's a great way to get into the swing of things. And for sure, like it's absolutely okay to not be able to do mediums or hard questions. Just start with the easies. I think I did easies for like a good year and a half before I was able to do like my first medium question. So just go for it slowly. All right, now moving on to mock interviews. So when you're doing technical interviews, it's very different from just leak coding. I think like when you go into an interview, the interviewer expects you to be able to speak out your train of thought and explain exactly how you came to the conclusion of the solution that you have. So something you can do is find a friend or a buddy to practice these interviews with, because when you have that friend there, you can say everything that you would say to an interviewer, and you can practice interacting with them, how they might respond, like if they ask you some questions, how you might respond. So it's just like, I guess, like a mock process of the pressure as well, because when you're talking to someone, it's so different from just like, typing up the code that comes up in your brain. And I also linked the previous year's technical interview workshop there if you guys are interested. But again, plugging in our workshop this afternoon for technical interviews. Okay, now we're going to move on to some tips and tricks for submitting your application. So this is the part where you will get so many applications after you follow these steps. So how do I personally make recruitment process more tangible? So I like to set a goal for how many practice questions I want to cover a day, how many companies I want to apply to a day. And if you look at this GIF here, I just have like a simple like graph, or the GIF isn't there right now, but I have like a list of all the companies I want to apply to, and I have like check boxes for when I've applied to them and how many I've applied to. And with something so visual in mind, even if you don't hear back, don't feel bad about it, because you put in the work and you can see that you actually applied to this many companies, this many heard back, and you're making progress. Don't feel too upset if like there aren't immediate results. And something else I do is I use a calendar, like an actual physical one, to mark off the days that I completed my goals. And I usually like put a sticker on my calendar for every day where I complete like 5 questions, and every day where I complete like 3 applications. And again, like if your friends are comfortable with the recruitment process topic, then I definitely recommend having a group of friends who you can reach out to and talk to when you're stressed, or you just need support. Like personally for me, I feel like if I didn't have my friend group supporting me, it would have been such a tough process and like so many breakdowns. But very thankful for all the people who were here to like just be there for you, and they're probably recruiting at the same time, so you can share tips and tricks and also even talk about the interview questions you had. And yeah, if you look at the GIF, like this is the list I was talking about. You have all the names and like how many companies apply to. And I also have a list of like all the questions that I want to do for specific companies even, or just like lists that I find online. Okay. All right, moving on. This is my favorite resource for everything. It's a Discord server that's called cscareers.dev. And within this within this Discord server, you can find a bunch of internship or new grad postings. Whenever they become available, someone will like post something into the Discord server, and and you can get a notice for that. And additionally, like there's a bunch of questions that are asked by companies specifically. Like you see in here in the GIF, I just typed in problems Microsoft, and the bot on the server will list out all of the questions that were most popularly asked by Microsoft in the past 6 months. So you just go down that list and like grind through those questions, and you just feel a lot more confident when you go into the interview after doing some prep. And within the Discord server, there's also something else about like salary sharing, which I think is really important because like talking about your salary with other peers, especially like learning what they are getting offered, that gives you kind of like a leverage in negotiating your own offer. And you can also find like a bunch of other resources in the server, such as other people you can do mock interviews with, and you can ask questions about like recruitment process for specific companies. They even have channels for like a company, like very specific companies that you might want to join. And like, it's just a great support system. I think I met a bunch of friends through this channel where they've given me a lot of tips and tricks during my interview process. And the link is at the bottom here if you want to join that server. All right, let's move on to what defines a company you should apply to. So based on personal experience, I think it is a terrible idea to have a dream company you want to get into. Don't have a dream company, but have dream qualities of a company. And why is that important? Because if you have one dream company, what happens if they reject you? You're upsetty spaghetti. But we don't want to do that. We want to be able to move forward and find other companies that we can still apply to, and like places that we feel like we're happy at. So basically like list out some qualities you want. Maybe you want the company to have like a high growth rate. Maybe you want the culture to be very open. Maybe you have a specific bar for compensation. No matter what it is, list these out, think about those goals and values, and I urge you to identify as many of those companies that align with your own values. So you can find companies anywhere like the Discord server, online GitHub repos. And referral from friends, very, very important, because usually a referral will get you, maybe like 90% of the time I got a referral, I hear back from the company, versus like cold call, like applying on the website, maybe 50-50. And then actually cold emailing is pretty well as well, but get referrals from friends because you hear back a lot easier. So back to the topic though, once you identify those companies, remember that list I was talking about earlier, make sure you add all those companies to the list and apply to as many of those as you can. I think like this strategy that I've had of applying to as many companies as I can, like it does give a bit of a burnout if you hear back a lot from like many companies, except that gives you an option, right? You want to be in a position where you can choose where you go to work. You don't want to be in a position where other people are choosing if they hire you. Once you widen your perspective of all the places you can be, you can choose the best option from that, and that's the place you want to be in. All right, honing in on apply first, think later. I think for a lot of beginners, like even myself, when I first started applying, I always thought, oh my God, it's so scary. Like I can't interview yet. I don't know anything. Like I don't have the skill sets for these. Don't think about that yet. It doesn't hurt to submit an application at all. You just click a button, super easy. And worst case, what happens? You get an automated rejection letter. Like that's fine. I get those like 10 a day or something. But don't worry about being underqualified for a job, because you learn on the job. And if they do say you're underqualified, then like, you can learn somewhere else. It doesn't matter. And like, if you think the interview process is too hard for you, it's time to step over that and start to think, I can do this. I can actually overcome how hard this interview process is. And it's not something that you can't change, because you can practice leak code, you can do mock interviews, you can talk with a mentor, you can talk with company representatives. These are all things you are in control of. It's not hard. It's only difficult because you haven't started trying yet. So overcome that mentality. And the need to submit an application to actually get an interview. I find a lot of my friends will come complaining to me and be like, Christy, this is so hard. Like, I hate recruitment process. I can't get a job. And I was like, did you apply yet? And they say, no, I didn't apply yet. And I'm like, why didn't you apply yet? And why are you complaining about the job process if you haven't applied yet? So this kind of explains itself. Like, why would you complain about the job process if you haven't applied yet? You just need to submit the application. So I will teach you now how to submit very quickly. So the best place, I think, for me to find jobs are what I listed here. You can go to hackathons, conferences, career fairs, and speak with sponsors. So at all of these places, the people there, the representatives of companies, they're there to recruit or there to like help you find a job or give you more insight into the industry. So if you're willing to take the step forward to talk to them in person and just have a genuine conversation about anything, it doesn't have to be like, I want a job. It could just be, oh, I created this project at the hackathon this weekend. Do you want to take a look at it and generate an organic conversation somewhat like frequently with all of these sponsors, and you'll start getting a bunch of offers. And honing in on asking friends for referrals, that's like a huge thing because as I explained earlier, you just hear back from referrals a lot more. And refer.me is a website where a bunch of, I guess, like full-time software engineers, they are looking to give out referrals because they actually get referral bonuses for every successful candidate who makes it into their company. So all you have to do is submit your profile and whatever past experience you have and say like posted onto refer.me, and those people will filter through your profiles and be like, oh, I think this person has potential to joining my company, and they'll just hand you a referral that way, which is super cool. And emailing recruiters, I actually just discovered this like very recently, and it has worked like 100% of the time for me. You know, if you email recruiters, like cold email them, then they will respond to you. If you LinkedIn message them, it's kind of more like 50-50 because it's quite saturated on LinkedIn. Everyone is doing a LinkedIn message. But if you click on that link for email recruiters, it'll take you to a site where you can actually find all of the emails for recruiters based on the company, which is really cool. So you just go through those emails and just apply as many as you can. Type them a genuine message and be like, hey, I want to come work at your company. This is my background. I want to work at your company because, and they'll usually get back to you because they're nice people. And keep your LinkedIn updated. So recruiters sometimes reach out to you based on your profile. Like if you say, I'm actively recruiting, if I have like these courses done, I've been doing these projects, they look at those. And after your first internship, make sure to stay connected with your colleagues because you never know when they might switch jobs and you want to work at that company. And I'll touch on this plugin Simplify that speeds up the process of application and simply click in the next slide. But like lastly, just apply on company websites, even though like you might have a co-op job board or whatever, applying on company websites still allows you to have a lot more chances to like actually getting the job. Don't limit yourself to the co-op job board. All right, let's move on to this amazing plugin. So you see how I click the button and all of my information is filled in for this application. Literally everything, my email, my resume, my work authorization, my demographic questions, all the tedious questions are filled out. And literally I just click the submit application button and there. That was like 3 seconds of work, not even. There are some questions that might not be filled out, like what is your zip code? Because that's not a generic question, but everything is filled out already. So what's stopping you from applying? It only takes 5 seconds max. All right, now this is a really great page that I urge all of our first or second years to click into. So these are some programs that are targeted towards first or second years or minorities. I won't go through that list, but feel free to click into them. And I think it's so much easier to get an internship with big companies than it is with small companies, especially when you're starting out, because they happen to have all the resources to take in all of you young learners, and they want to grow you and keep you as an asset for their company. So that's why they come up with these programs. So take advantage of and get into a big company a lot easier. So the link at the bottom here that says list of underclassmen internships, there's actually like 50 or so of these first or second year internships there. So I just listed out some of the more popular ones. But yeah, this is the end of the workshop portion. We're going to move into panel later, but I always like to leave participants of workshops with something tangible that they can take away. So this is a to-do list where I urge you, like, if you are able to tick off all of these boxes, I think your recruitment process will go very smoothly and you will hear back from so many companies that, you know, you'll just be interviewing every day, which could be great or could be sad. But that if that is your goal, just go through this to-do list and you will do well. All right, now I'm going to welcome in our TAs for a Q&A panel.
Take glasses off. Wait, where's the edge of the frame?
Oh, I see.
Alrighty.
I don't know where the edge is.
Okay. Hi, Cheese. Want to introduce yourselves first? Maybe so I can start.
Okay. I'm Stephanie. I'm a 4th year CS student.
I'm Victoria. I'm a 2nd year cognitive systems student.
I'm also Victoria, and I'm a 5th year econ student.
I'm Jackie, and I'm currently in my 3rd year of CS.
Awesome. Thank you, TAs. So we're going to go through some questions. If anyone has any, feel free to drop them in the activity banter channel. If not, I'll just start off with asking the TAs the first question to begin with. So do any of you have any rituals to empower yourself during recruitment season? Something like power moves, talking with a friend, maybe like making a cup of tea? Anyone want to start first?
I'm thinking. I was gonna say Dwayne the Rock Johnson. But
I think for me, like definitely talking with a friend. Like I need someone to hype me up before my interviews. Usually that friend is Christy.
Christy's the best interview hyper.
Yeah,
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to take that or anything else?
No, I feel like you just like go into the interview. I think it's nice to like make sure you have eaten and are hydrated before you do the interview. You don't want to be doing it on an empty stomach.
I also think that you shouldn't like be cramming like the hour before the interview. So like take some time to like chill out, relax, get into the right headspace. Make sure you're calm before heading in, because that could really like make or break the interview for me.
Amazing. All right, we'll move on to the next question. Do you guys have some tips for our hackers who might be interviewing right now?
I feel like as a hacker who is interviewing right now, I think honestly it's just like everything that has been said, and just like kind of just trusting the process, and knowing that like if you get a rejection, that's totally fine. Like it's like kind of like a redirection, and that's totally okay. And it's more about just gaining experience rather than working towards like just finding that goal-worthy position. So yeah.
I think don't be afraid to ask for help from friends to help you do mock interviews. I think there's only so much leak coding by yourself is going to be able to get you. A big part of the interview is not only knowing how to solve the problem, but communicating your solution to your interviewer as well, and working with them, because you're not working against your interviewer, you're working with them. This is your potential coworker in the future. You want to show them how you can potentially work together in the future. So work with your friends, maybe help each other out, do mock interviews with each other, practice talking through all of your steps. I think that's a really big part. Like a lot of people, I think, underestimate the communication part of the interview a lot.
I guess in addition to that, like the friends portion, I started like this 1 hour long like interview prep / application group every single week. And I think that kind of helps me, and like meeting with my friends, or like having a dedicated time where it's for prep, versus if I don't have that, I kind of feel like I always should be prepping, which kind of messes with my schedule. So
Yeah, also, like Victoria said, I think don't hyper-fixate on one company, even though it might be like one of your dream companies, because sometimes like the rejection hurts a lot. Just keep on going, you'll get through it. Like just take that experience as, I guess, just practice for your next interview. So.
All right, I think we have a question from the audience. So how do you decide the allocation of time for schoolwork versus interview or application?
I shouldn't answer. I like prioritize interviews over school, so I will literally like drop school for a little bit, or like not like drop, but like focus more on my interviews than school, like how I allocate my time. Obviously, like I'll do school assignments, labs, whatever. But I will definitely spend more effort preparing for the interview, especially if I really want it, so that I can like go in knowing that like, oh, I've done everything I can in my power to successfully prepare or not. I tried to catch up on school after, but try is a very big word.
Yeah. I think it also depends like how okay you are with falling behind. I know a lot of people that feeling is like really like soul crushing for them, so they can't really do that. So they try to balance it better. But for some people who maybe see school as less important in their future, I know like emphasize interviews a lot more. No subtweeting here.
All right, I see some participants typing. All right, another one. How important are grades compared to technical experience, such as personal projects or elite code? That's a good question.
Personal projects.
I feel like I've been talking a lot.
No, but I feel like you
answer. Okay. I think grades matter actually very little compared to technical experience projects, and I think maybe elite code less. I know a lot of people who have bad grades and just completely omit their GPA off of their resume entirely, and like they're completely fine getting jobs. So I think a lot of it is making sure that because in the industry you're mainly demonstrating your proficiency, and grades is just a proxy for how proficient you are and how fast you're able to learn. But if you're able to demonstrate that through personal projects or lead code or other technical experience, then that works as well.
Yeah, and also I think the reason why like a lot of companies care more about your industry experience or projects or any of those compared to your grades is that like I feel like a lot of our courses don't like directly translate into the work that you're going to be doing at a company. So they like are more looking for like your ability to learn and think. Yeah. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and like I don't think many companies ask for your transcript. For example, Google does, but aside from that, I don't think I've come across any company that has. And GPA is optional in your resume, so
Yeah.
All right, another question we have is, what kind of personal projects did you guys have for your first successful interview?
Jackie.
That's a great question.
You guys want to go first?
Okay, I'll say first. I guess this might be helpful for someone who's not specifically thinking about like a technical project. For myself, at least, writing blog posts or written content related to the company or industry that I want to work at was really helpful. And then recruiters can kind of look at my profile and see that that I'm like generally interested in the industry that I would like to work at. I also like for like startup recruiting, I usually do like a short like analysis of like the company, and I come up with like areas that I think there's like opportunity for said company. So these are more specifically related to the actual companies that I want to work at. But it's sometimes nice to tailor your projects to said company.
I think my first technical interview actually was pretty early on in my technical career. For those of you who are in high school right now, actually, Hootsuite does an annual high school internship program, and that was my very first interview. So going into that, I actually did not have like a huge deal of technical experience. I think a lot of the interview was just talking about what I've attempted in the past. They weren't necessarily looking for successful projects per se, but like what you tried and what you learned from it. So the project I talked about was, I did science fair in high school. So my science fair project was like, it was like a speech to braille like device thing. So explaining my thought process about how I worked through that, some of the failures I came across and like what I learned from that, I think was pretty key for that interview.
All right, I think Vic was on design, but we have a question about people are loving the graphic design for HackCamp and UI, and are wondering if you know of any resources for learning how to get started in design.
Yeah, I would say like honestly just Google. Like there's definitely like when I joined the design team last year in for nwPlus, I literally had no design experience, so everything I learned was from my director and other designers in the team. So they walked me through kind of like the mood boarding and Figma aspect of it. So there's definitely a lot of great tutorials out there. And yeah, along with that, I guess like just finding friends who are willing to like teach you and work through it with you is definitely a great plus. So yeah.
Yeah, and I did accidentally skip a question, but we asked, how good should your projects be? I guess maybe like, could you give some descriptions of what you think would be a project that you could put on your resume?
I know a lot of people like doing like the meme/MERN stack thing, like a full stack web app, because like there's a lot of tutorials on it and it's like pretty like integrated, or like it touches a lot of like areas. But I also think that like an important thing is to be able to talk through your project, because if they're asking you about that in an interview, they're more curious as to like why you did something, or like they want to know how like familiar you are with the project. So that's really important.
Yeah, I also want to say I think passion matters a lot for a project. Like, don't pick a project because it's in like a top 10 projects you should put on your resume list, but like try to find actual problems you have in your life and then try to figure out if there's a way you can solve it technically. I think when you have a real problem you're trying to solve, that can really come through when you're trying to describe that to your interviewer and showing that you really care about what you're working on. And I think that really improves the quality of your project too, if you're doing it for the sake of actually solving your own problem rather than just like doing it to fulfill some resume criteria.
Okay, and I think JP asked a great question earlier. He asked, how do you deal with being rejected so much, and how do you keep going?
I kind of sound like a broken record, but I think a support system is so important when you're recruiting. I know it can kind of sometimes be awkward because you might sometimes be going for like the same job or like same role or same industry, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to find a job, and there's more than enough jobs out there. So just having a good group of people who are also like striving towards the same goal as you and talking through it really helped for me.
+1.
Something Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like if you get rejected, you are no worse off than if you didn't apply in the first place. So you don't lose. I think Christy mentioned this earlier as well, but like you don't lose anything by applying to a job.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people when they first get started, they take rejections as a measure of their personal ability. Like don't take it that way. Like if you've ever been on the other side of reviewing applications, you know how sometimes like pretty random and chaotic it can get. Like just because of circumstances, a lot of really qualified people do get turned down, and you're probably one of them. So like keep that in mind. Like keep your head up, kings and queens. You know, don't let that discourage you.
Okay, we have another question. So, it is my first time learning computing. Are there any good resources you would recommend for newbies like me to get into a position of participating in hackathons?
Oh,
Self-learning resources.
Yeah,
So, perfect opportunity to plug, but NW has put together a pretty good resource for people looking to get into tech and hackathons. You can reach it at resources.nwplus.io. Yeah, Melvin perfectly has.
Thank you. Yeah, we made this last year. A lot of people contributed to it, and there's like different things like intro to Git, like full stack dev, stuff like that. There's a lot on there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are also just like happy to answer questions as well. So it's like have us as a support network as well. So if you have any questions about like things you may be confused about, like hackathons and groups like this are a perfect place to ask them.
And the fact that you're here today is a really good first step.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some more questions that I prepared. So, what advice would you give to yourself when you were first starting to interview? Like, given your experience that you have now, what would you have done differently back then?
Thinking.
I mean, this has already been said before, but I think it's important. I didn't apply to that many things when I was first starting off, just because like I wasn't in computer science or like had any like course background. So I was like, oh, I'm probably like really underqualified. I won't apply, but like, don't sell yourself short. Just apply. Like, you're not the one deciding that. Whoever reviewing your application is, like, leave it up to them. Just apply. Yeah, just shoot your shot.
Yeah, I think for this process, referrals and connections also actually matter a lot. Like the resume black hole is a real thing where a lot of people will just apply through online portals and often not hear back. And really knowing someone at a company who can refer you is often like a really big like stepping stone to actually getting your first interview. And I think after getting the first interview, you can wow them with all your prowess and you should be good. But I think, yeah, definitely getting that first interview is really hard for a lot of people. So I think referrals help a lot with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess just along with that, I would say like don't be afraid to get your resume reviewed by friends who are willing to help. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's just like a great resource because then you they've been through the process before, so they know what to look for. And I think there's also like resume evaluators online. I think Chris, you probably mentioned that. So yeah.
And adding on to Jackie's point, actually, even if you don't know someone like personally who works for a company, the Discord channel that Christy linked, like CS Career Stuff, is really, really helpful. Like the community is super nice. So like you could probably ask someone, like if they were like willing to give a referral, because some interns get a bonus, and people are generally usually like nice. So
Generally.
Okay, is there anything not to do during the application or interview process? Any no-nos?
Oh, I would say don't sell yourself short, but don't lie. Like don't
Mhm.
put
Yeah.
anything
Oh.
don't put anything that you didn't actually do because
Yeah.
it's gonna be really obvious during the interview or when you actually have to talk about it.
Generally, you should be able to like speak about everything on your resume to like some like a good extent. Like you should know what you're talking about, and like the interviewer will definitely know if you don't. Yeah. What not to do?
I think a lot of people treat interviews as kind of like a one-way street where companies are just grilling you.
Yeah.
But I think it's also good to remember that it's a two-way interview. You're also assessing the vibes of the company. So like, don't try to pretend to be someone you're not for the sake of trying to please the company. Like a lot of the times I think it's also assessing how well you can fit into the culture of the company as well. But yeah, I think that's definitely more for later on in your interview years when you have more choice. I think definitely not something you have to focus on for your first few internships.
Yeah, so we got a question about the calendar to-do list app I used on the presentation. So that's actually called Notion. I think it's pretty popular with a bunch of people now, and it's widely used. I can probably do a quick demo like a minute or so later. But the next question we have for our TAs is there a recruitment season when looking for a summer internship, or do companies recruit all year round?
I guess like in general it's kind of annoying in that it really depends on the company. But does anyone know more about like I guess like stateside companies? Because that might be you can go first.
You have more US offers than
that. I know like a lot of US companies like medium to big companies or even like startups recruit like in the fall. So like even starting August like before like the year that your internship is taking place. So kind of like around now. And they keep on interviewing throughout the fall season and sometimes into early like New Year. For more like local companies, because I also have friends who've experienced like UBC co-op or like some kind of co-op. They hire normally like a few months before. So like for example, if you were looking for summer, they would be starting to interview you like in February. But yeah, it's crazy how early it is sometimes.
There's another question about how long it took to feel prepared for technical interviews. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like no matter how much prep you do, you're never going to feel prepared. Like I've done over I think 150 leak code questions, and I still like going into an interview like scared shitless most of the time. So I think it's hard.
I never feel like technically prepared. Like it's a hard like thing to get to, but you do feel more like comfortable going into an interview because you've had that experience, like mock interviewing or use like other interviews. So you just get more used to it.
Yeah, so we're going to take one final question for our TA panel. I do see someone typing, but yeah, thank you so much to our TAs for answering all of these questions, and hopefully everyone feels a little more confident in themselves for this application process. That's probably the most important thing. Just have confidence in yourself and believe that you can do it. Okay, so our final question, how common are remote or work from home opportunities, if you guys know anything about that?
I would say they're, especially now, extremely common. I think at most I've been seeing like hybrid options. So if you really want to go back to an office, they like some companies may give you that option too. But I don't know. From my experience, generally, it's been for the time being pretty remote, and like plans to potentially be in person like next year, but those things are so fluid right now, like those policies and stuff. So
Also, I think a few companies have actually shifted to like fully remote because of the pandemic. So like if you do join those companies, you might not get that in-person experience.
All right, a round of applause for our TAs. Thank you so much for answering everyone's questions. So I'm gonna step through like a quick Notion tutorial since we have time. Yeah, thank you, TAs. Yeah, so here, let's see. I feel like this is a great resource that everyone should learn about. So Notion is a productivity tool that I think a lot of like startups, personal users, students, everyone goes to use this as like a tool that they use to organize their everyday life. Mine is just starting up a little slow, but basically I have a list of questions that I want to go through per company usually because I like to target my questions. And then I also have a list of the companies that I applied to. And I also have a list of all the questions that I've done so far, because I think that really helps me understand the questions better. Every single time before I interview, I'll go back to my list and just like scroll through it really quickly. And I'll be like, oh, I remember how to do this. Oh, this is how I do binary search. So just having that reference there is really nice. I'm so sorry my laptop is slow, but this should only take a very short second to load up. But yeah, I am currently on, so this is the page where I refer to, because I use Python as my coding language, I just have like a bunch of things that I tend to forget on this page, and it goes down a long list. I won't scroll through all of it, but this is just like, I put questions that I've done through, and yeah, this list is long, but this is not the important part that I want to show. So Notion is really great for organizing what you need to do. I guess like I showed the questions that I do, and something, right, what is something I want to show? Okay, yeah, I want to show this. So I don't think the GIF kind of did a good job, but basically all you can see is rejected for me. This is all red. I have, okay, so these are the ones I interviewed with, but let's look at the ones that I didn't interview with. So these are also all red usually, but look at this count. I had 169 companies that I have on my list that I didn't interview with, but I already had another 44 on the companies that I did interview with. So I really urge you to like, even if you see all these reds, it's still a way of quantifying that you did all these interviews. I maybe went through like 8 rounds of interviews for all of these companies, but you know, I still got rejected. There's nothing wrong with that though. Like, I think it hurts a lot the moment you get that rejection email, but step past that and look further and think, you know, maybe it's an opportunity for you to get something better. So I do have like current interviews as well, so I won't discount those. I will keep those in mind and keep moving forwards. And yeah, there's also the calendar view for productivity, which I think is pretty cool for Notion. So here I just list out all my tasks to do, and I have like a calendar of all like the things that I need to do the next few days. So yeah, this is a great way to get yourself set up to success so that you can see things in person, like visualize everything, and it's very tangible. Once you do something, then just check it off your to-do list. So yeah, that's kind of like a brief introduction of Notion. But Thank you so much for coming to HackCamp's first workshop, and I hope you all enjoyed this workshop and took something away from it. And stay tuned for our upcoming Intro to Git workshop that is happening in 15 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone.